Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. And for those of you in the U.S., let's not forget what today commemorates and memorializes. And today is basically just an open Q&A. You can see behind me, I've done a little bit of layout work, been working out in the driveway, doing some finishing landscaping out in the yard and everything. Gonna have this finally, the spoil board finally done, uh, probably tomorrow. Should be ready to surface it by Tuesday, and then have that video next week. Here's hoping. Oh man, a little bit of inside behind the scenes here. We talked about it a few weeks ago, and the last couple of weeks, I have not been editing these live streams after the fact. I have been leaving them up um, with the countdown timer. There we go, a little bit. There we go, a little bit better shot. I've been leaving the countdown timer intact so we have the live chat over here. Well, see, it'd be on this side to you guys. Um, and I don't know if that's better, worse, or what. I haven't so far received any feedback from anyone at all, good or bad. So with that in mind, I'm just going to leave it intact. I'm no longer going to edit out any of the countdown timers at all. There's nothing I can do about the previous videos where I did edit out the countdown timer and the live chat has gone away. But from now on, I won't be editing out the countdown timer. So with all of that out of the way, let's go over here and take a look at what we have going in the chat. We don't have any questions as of yet, but Brooks Martin was talking about working with Purple Heart and discovering how dense it is. And well, I just was told that I forgot to post a promo link to this live stream on Facebook. Whoops. Major mistake. Too late to take care of that now. I guess the right people will find us. So, oops, that was a mistake. Yeah. Anyway, talking about Purple Heart, it's too late for me to do anything about it now. I'm not going to log into Facebook to do it. So I guess, sorry, y'all. Man, and I used to think I knew how to do this stuff. Just in talking about Purple Heart in general, uh, the secret to it, Brooks, is if you want to keep that purple color, you have to completely seal it from any kind of oxygen. Was that Tom? I thought that was Tom. Okay, my mistake. That was Tom. That was talking about working with Purple Heart. I got the two discussions confused. My apologies. Man, I need to go back to bed and try waking up again. It's going to be one of those days. Um, the thing about Purple Heart is you have to completely seal it from oxygen in order to keep that purple color. Otherwise, it's going to oxidize and just turn brown. A friend of mine down in Nevada built a guitar using the entire body is Purple Heart, and the neck is see the neck. If I'm not mistaken, wow, it's been so long since I've looked at the picture. I don't remember what the neck was, but the fretboard and the headstock were bound with Purple Heart. The fretboard is, I want to say rosewood, and then the headstock veneer is Spanish cedar. And it it was all framed in Purple Heart or bound. He used Purple Heart binding on it, and the thing is still as purple as the day he built it. He made it in 1997. I took some pictures in 2012, and the thing was just glorious. And he used, I don't remember how many coats of lacquer he used on it, but the secret is to just seal it from oxygen. And Jack Matson is asking about Paduke. It's the same situation there. It will eventually oxidize and turn brown unless you completely seal it from the air. Now that brings about some interesting problems when it comes to doing something like a cutting board or anything that where you're concerned about food safety. Um, because most wax finishes will still let just enough air in to start oxidizing that color. I mean, unless you stay on top of it. I mean, if you are on a regular schedule of keeping that thing perfectly waxed and make sure all of those pores are full and sealed from the air, it is going to oxidize. Um, I'm not certain about woods like bloodwood or yellow heart. Um, most of my finishes, whenever I'm going to do something like that, I'll use a lacquer or a shellac finish that perfectly seals it. Now, there are some that would argue, and for the most part, it's true, that um, all finishes, with the exception of lead-based finishes, are food safe after they've achieved a complete cure. But if it's going to be used at all in any kind of food preparation, you have to worry about pieces of finish flaking off, getting into the food, or just scratches or cut marks or things of that nature. So using uh, using decorative woods like that, it looks spectacular, but do know that it's going to fade. Now, Michael Mazalik has just said that he finds yellow heart will fade over time without a finish. I've have very, very limited experience with yellow heart. So, and I haven't seen it long after the fact. Basically, once it left the shop, that was the last I saw of it, and that was when I was working at a custom cabinet shop in Georgia. So, you know, it's uh, it's just one of those things. It's a trade-off. Now, if you're going to be again, if you're going to be making like a cutting board or something like that, you could always seal it with an epoxy, and they're food safe after a full 30-day cure. But again, you have to balance that out with the intended use. If it's going to be something that's displayed and never used, then it doesn't really matter. But if it's going to have regular use, um, then it's going to be, I don't know, there's a juggling act there, there's a balancing act there to play. Now, Peter Van Vliet asks, how do you decide lacquer versus shellac? It depends upon the use of the project. If it's going to be handled, I'll probably use a lacquer versus a shellac. Shellac is a beautiful finish, but it's not as durable as a lacquer is. And shellac has its own care problems as well. If you set something wet on a shellac finish, it's going to blush. If any type of an alcohol-based product gets on shellac, it can melt that shellac. If you use the lacquer, it's generally a little bit more durable. If it's going to live a rough and tumble life and going to be beat up and used, I'll go with the polyurethane. Case in point, my wife's first spinning wheel, well over 20 years old. I finished it. I used a spit coat of amber shellac on it as kind of more or less as a stain, but just basically to tint the woods and give it a golden color. And then I finished it with a spar urethane. And other than it getting beat up in transport, she takes it to demonstrations and things of that nature. Um, so other than it getting banged around, the finish still looks as good as the day I finished it. I mean, it's pretty much carefree. Just wipe it down if you spill something on it and uh, let it go. And I'm the same with furniture, especially if there are going to be kids involved. I'll go ahead and give it a urethane finish because it's more durable. So um, it's it's kind of a balancing act. I don't have a one size fits all finish. Generally, if it's going to be something that's very fine, held in your hand, um, guitar necks for a good example. I My favorite hand rubbed oil finish is True Oil Rifle Stock Finish. You can get it at sporting goods centers, and some of the big box stores have it, but it's a tongue oil with a few other varnishes and conditioners in it, and it makes an, no pun intended, almost bulletproof finish. It's really a good finish that will just make whatever you're applying it to glow. The downside is it's labor intensive. I made a mistake one time. My niece got a brand new spinning wheel, and I decided that I loved the wood that it was made out of so much. I decided to give it a true oil finish. And I used 5 coats of rifle stock oil on it. And that was so labor intensive, it was 13 hours of hand rubbing finish. You apply 1 coat and hang it up, let it dry for an hour, and then come and apply the 2nd coat. And the last 2 coats I apply with 4/0 steel wool. The problem with that was there were so many individual parts to this thing that by the time I finished the last part, the first part was ready for its next coat. So 13 hours of, and just taking breaks to grab something to eat and run to the bathroom. And, I decided right then and there that that was the last thing that big I was going to do a hand rub finish. Now, it's still beautiful. The thing is gorgeous. And this was probably 7, 8 years ago now. But if it's something small like a jewelry box or a hand mirror or something that's going to be handled, it's a silky smooth, gorgeous finish. And that's my favorite. I love it. Let's see, we have a few comments here about Bill Stauffer says Woodcraft has true oil. Yes. I find their markup to be just a little bit more than some of the big box stores. Look back in the sporting goods section of the big box retailers or sporting goods shops, Big Five or Dick's or something like that. They have true oil there, and I love it. Uh, but again, it's not quite, but very almost 100% tongue oil. So a tongue oil finish will give you a similar finish. So I'm going to uh, I'm going to be getting into some alternate finishes a little bit later on when I get back into the projects. In fact, I'm thinking seriously about doing a tongue oil finish on the Pirate when I get it done. And but we'll see how that goes. Don't quote me on that. I may not. It just depends. So we'll see what happens when it happens. See, Russell Faraday says his go-to is Danish oil, but it's not very UV resistant. I as far as UV resistance, I really don't know how a tung oil or a natural oil finish is with UV. It's not something that I've ever really, I've never really gotten that deep into it. So I'm not sure. Michael Mazalik says finishes, good topic for videos, much needed. I'm kind of doing a few little tests behind the scenes. One I've been teasing for about 6 months now. I just have to get to it. Is a couple of years back, I made some yard art. I made a sign for my wife, and I used one of the popular exterior finishes, clear coats on it. And it's, without naming names yet, it's one of the most popular that I see being used out there. And I hung it up on the fence, and it's been outside in the weather ever since. It gets direct sun, it gets the rain, the snow, the hot, the cold, everything, and it's peeling off. So I plan on showing that when I get into that video. The problem is trying to come up with an alternative. And I haven't found one yet. And that's kind of what I've been waiting on, because I was going to do a review of this finish after a year, but I don't have an alternative. I don't have another direction to send people to. So, and Les makes an excellent point that the best exterior finish is house paint, exterior house paint. On a painted project, you're 100% correct. The only downside that I can find is I can't seem to find it in any container smaller than a gallon. Now, that may just be my local market. You can get interior paint all day long. I buy little sample pots of interior latex house paint for lettering and what have you. You can get a sample for $3, $4 in any color the paint manufacturer makes. And it's good stuff. But exterior paint, the smallest I can find it in is a gallon here locally. Maybe I need to expand my horizons a little bit. So if you have other experience, let me know. But I can't justify going and buying a gallon of house paint to do one little sign that's going to go up on a wall. In fact, when I cut out the projects on this exterior grade MDF, I'm going to be using leftover house paint from when we painted our house 9 years ago. But the fact that we painted our house 9 years ago and it still looks just as good as it did back then proves its toughness. So yeah, if you're doing a painted project, exterior latex house paint, perfect. Um, I agree with you, Michael. You used to be able to go get Valspar medium tint base, and it dried almost crystal clear. And I mean, good enough. But the problem is they changed their formula and it now has a bit of a white tint to it. So um, if you can if you can refer me to a brand, then great, great. And I haven't experimented with it myself, but there have been a few people that have said, well, what about just automotive clear coats? I've never tried an automotive clear coat on wood. I know it's not made for wood, so I don't know how durable it would be. But you've seen automotive clear coats fade. I mean, just look at the hoods of cars going past you and what have you. So I don't know how much better an automotive clear coat would be. Go Sign Go says they use one shot, but expensive. Yeah. I know a couple of pinstripers down in California. That's their go-to. They use one shot. But again, it's expensive stuff, but it's formulated for that. So it's it's an automotive grade finish. And I don't know how an automotive clear cut would do. All right, I'm going to have to talk to John. John Thompson said he used an automotive clear coat on wood, truck bed wood. I'm going to have to talk to you about that and see what kind and how it weathered. What I'm concerned with is automotive clear coat. Is it flexible enough to account for expansion and contraction on something that's going to be, say, a cedar sign that's hung out in front of somebody's business? Or is it just going to start deteriorating rapidly and start flaking off like this urethane I used did? So Russell Faraday says a lot of marine paints in the UK are available in half liter. Yeah, and I've looked into marine paints as well. But in talking with folks who are into the classic boat hobby, like the old Chris Craft and other mahogany decked classic boats from the 20s and 30s, 40s, even they will say that they have to revarnish their decks or touch them up uh, periodically to keep them looking good. Maybe not yearly, but very few of them let it go 5 years without some sort of constant work and constant maintenance to keep it looking good. And for a sign out in front of a business, I don't know how feasible that is, really. Now, RB Woodwork says Sherwin-Williams does small can samples. I talked with my I've talked with my local Sherwin-Williams, and the only samples I can get is interior here. Now, it's not to say in your market, of course, you have a larger market up in your area. But down here, the only sample size I can get is interior. And I've checked with Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore and a few others. But again, I may have to expand my horizons to see what else is out there. So. Okay, Brooks Martin says Blacktail Studios has moved to adding a ceramic finish after all other finishes. And Cam is saying the car guys have given him the best advice in finishing. Yeah, again, I don't know. And I'm fully willing to experiment with it and just give it a shot. I'm not opposed to doing that at all. It's just right now I can't speak to it and say yes, no, or maybe because I literally don't know because I've not tried it yet. But I do know that the most popular exterior polyurethane, if it's going to be more than a couple of years, you know, save your money, basically. So, oh man. Well, let's see here. I haven't seen any questions at all. And Michael, please do. If you can throw out a brand name for me to try, I'm all ears. Believe me. Usually I'm mostly mouth, but I'm all ears. I'm ready to jump in. As far as finishing videos, I am not a finisher. I don't have the eye for color that finishers do, and I wish I did. But I know some techniques that I'm more than happy to share. And there's a few things out there that a lot of folks wouldn't think about, but there's a lot out there that I have no experience with. So I'm not going to play around with it. So, all right. Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate it. Todd is saying the Valspar didn't last long for him either. I didn't use Valspar on this clear coat that I tried. I didn't use Valspar. Now, one of my buddies up in Canada, who is a fabulous pinstriper and sign maker, he um, gave me one secret, and in that, for his less expensive work, what he likes to do is use a semi-transparent deck stain to stain his wood. Then he'll V-carve into it and then go back and hand paint his lettering and do any striping or airbrush work or artwork out that he does on his signs. But he really, really likes using, and in fact, the brand he uses is Behr, Behr. That's sold here in the US and in Canada, I believe, through Home Depot stores. But he swears by this stuff, semi-transparent deck stain. And I have played with it. I haven't gotten serious with it, but from my little limited experiments with it, it does work very well. It's not a clear coat, but it is made for exterior applications. So, you know. Les Clemens asked a very interesting question here. How many of you got projects that you've cut out but still have not finished? Me personally, I have 3. And that will soon to be fixed. Here's hoping anyway. I've got, and a lot of it is fence art for my wife, but it's just finding time to juggle everything. Um, I'm one of those weird people that finishing doesn't bother me. In fact, I firmly believe that the finish can make or break a project. And in that, if it's not done right, and if you don't take your time and pay attention to detail, you might as well spray paint it flat black and be done with it. Because the most beautiful hand cut dovetails in the world are not going to matter if the finish looks like trash and nobody wants to look at it. And they just kind of, So, yes, it takes some patience. Yes, it takes a lot of prep. Finishing is 10 minutes of brushing or spraying after 10 hours of preparation, sanding, burnishing, whatever the case may be. But it's a necessary evil that will highlight the work that you've put into it. So I know that there are some husband and wife teams out there where he hates finishing and she loves it, so she'll do the finishing. And I mean, yeah. So let's see. Michael says they use Pratt and Lambert for most of their projects, but not sure if they sell small quantities. That is a factor. Also, selling to the general public, where do you pick it up? Is this mail order? Is this something that you can only order online and have shipped to you? Or is there a local distributor you go through? Is this a wholesaler for contractors, etc.? So there are a bunch of things like that to worry about as well. Todd HCNC says, I'm assuming that's Sherwin-Williams. Acrylon 100 HS works, but is also expensive. If you're doing a custom commission for somebody, sometimes that price can be absorbed into that. But if you're doing a $30 sign, you can't be spending $100 on a finish, unless you can recoup that out of the next 18, 20, 30 projects, So buying large quantities is great for the production folks, But for a home hobbyist like me, it's silly for me to buy a 5-gallon can of something because I'll never use it all, you know. So let's see if we have anything else up here. And get into. Okay, Brooks Martin says no local distributor in my area. Maybe online orders for Pratt and Lambert. Yeah, and everything is relative. I know we have viewers joining us from outside the U.S., so anything I could talk about here would only be for the U.S., possibly Canada if I know for sure it's sold there. But I don't know what's available in Europe. I don't know what's available in Australia or New Zealand. And you may be sitting there shaking your head, wagging your finger at the screen saying, well, just use this. Well, if I've never heard of it or it's not sold in the US, I can't try that. So let's see here. Any tips on finishing MDF? It depends on the finish. If you want a clear coat, use a sanding sealer, a couple, 3 coats of sanding sealer, then top coat it. If you're painting it, again, use a sanding sealer, maybe 2 coats of a sanding sealer, then a primer. And it may be 2 or 3 coats of a sandable primer, a primer that you can sand and won't be oily or tacky or gum up. Let it dry between coats. Sand it, and if it still looks rough and ragged, primer it and sand it again. Get it as close to perfect as you can in the primer stage, then paint it. I mean, there comes a point when you're finishing MDF to where it almost turns into automotive bodywork, because that's how intense it can become. If you're looking, and it also depends on the project, because if it's, 12 feet up or 15 feet up on the front of your house, a big white barn star or something like that, little surface imperfections, you may never ever see it. But if it's going to be something like a sign in front of a business at eye level or mounted on, an address sign mounted on the front of your house, you want as close to perfection as you can get. So it almost becomes a automotive bodywork type of a thing. Sand, prime some more, sand, sand some more, and when it looks nice and smooth the way it's supposed to look when painted, then you can start painting. Don't rely on paint to cover up scratches or errors because they will telegraph through. So, see, Les Clemens wants to know any plans for a paint booth inside or out. No, I will probably end up getting a painting tent just to keep dust and insects out of the finish while it's drying. But I don't have the space for a paint booth. If it's anything larger than, let's say, 24 inches by 24 inches, I'll probably use a painting tent. If it's smaller than that, I will probably just put it on a piece of plywood on painter's pyramids outside, spray it there, and then cover it with a dish cover. So, and a dish cover you can get at the big box retail stores, not the home improvement centers. I think you know those stores that I'm talking about. And what it is it's a mesh dome, basically. Some of them are round, some of them are rectangular, and they're made to cover dishes and plates when you're out picnicking or camping to keep bugs out of them. And they're usually a little bit bigger than 12 inches by 12 inches. And that'll keep all the most of the dust and all the bugs out of your finish. Because I don't know what it is about insects and wet paint, but it's like if you spray any kind of a finish, and I don't care if it's lacquer, polyurethane, Krylon, it's like a call to every bug in the county to come visit your wet paint. So what can I say? Pilot error. Let's see here. Peter Van Vliet wants to know any go-to settings for photo V-carves, bit depth, step over spacing, angle speed, raster versus hatch, etc. No. That's the short answer. I've not yet done a photo V-carve. I plan on changing that maybe at the beginning of the new year, but I've not done a photo V-carve yet. So maybe I'll have some then. So let's see. Suicidal at all times says same as kids in concrete. Yes, or dogs in or cats in concrete. I mean, if they can walk through it, they will. So, see, Mario Montoya says tool database. Having a hard time move a tool to a new group. Move an existing tool in the end mills group to a newly created group in the end mills group. Clicked and dragged multiple times to get it to move to the new group. Have you tried copying it to the new group? Let's see. Let me switch over to Aspire and let's experiment, Mario. Let's see. Let's see. Go to Tool Paths. Go to Tool Database. Let's see here. Let's add a new group. Where am I at? I'm on that. Okay, let's go to this one here, and I'll leave it called New Group. Now let's take this, and we will, let's copy that tool and drag this copy into the new group. And there it is. So it's no longer down here in the end mills. There it is. So I can just copy it and go for that. Does that help you at all, Mario? By copying it and moving that copy into the group. Then if you really want to, you could come in and delete this one. But that way you don't plug up your, fill up your tool database with duplicates and what have you. Speaking of which, that's something that I need to talk to Vectric about. I did. I did put it in the wrong group. You're right. Thank you. Okay, put it there. Now it's in the new group. Okay. That's something I need to talk to Vectric about and see if they can put any kind of a subroutine in that would highlight duplicates. I don't mean delete them, but highlight duplicate bits that have all the same criteria that are in different groups. I wonder if they could do that. We'll see. We'll see. I'll talk to them about it. And because it's a copy, you will have to go in and again do, copy the settings from this. I'll copy it and then not change anything because it is a direct copy of this tool here. Click apply, and then there it is. Okay. Now I come up here to toolpaths, go into tool database, new group, expand it, and there it is. So, okay. All right. So let me go ahead and stop sharing there. And I can go back in and just delete that whole group. Yes. All right. There. That's done. Save my changes. Okay. Let's see. Dave Blackburn says, or maybe rename the new group. Yeah, you could do that as well. Let's see here. Peter Van Vliet says Vectric needs to add a tool search option too. Well, send them send a email to Vectric support and suggest it. That's where they get ideas for their version updates and upgrades. Suggest it. I mean, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So the more people that suggest an addition or a modification, the more likely it is to happen. So, go to Vectric's website, click on the support link there, and send them an email making that suggestion. See, Steve Bobby wants to know, is there any way to print the tool database? In vCarve, I don't think so. Let's find out. Let's go over here, toolpaths, tool database. I don't think that there is. You can export, but it will export as a tool file. And I don't think that can be opened in anything else because it's more than just a list of the names. The tool file has all the cutting parameters and everything else. For instance, go back to my 2-flute half-inch bit. The tool file will have all of this information with it. So, yeah, I don't think that there is a way of printing out your tool database. But I'll take a look at it. I'll do a little bit more digging and ask a few questions. So, Brooks Martin says, I've added the massive Amana tool database, and copying the new tool into the right group is a process. Ha ha. Pro tip. Whenever you download an upgrade or an update, it is a new separate install. So it's just like you're installing, if you go from vCarve or Aspire, well, this is going to come up later on down the road. When you go from 11.0 to 11.5, the 11.5 upgraded version is going to be a brand new install. So you will have 11.0 and 11.5 on your computer. I save that old version, download the Amana tool database, and import it into the old version. Then when I buy an Amana tool, say I buy, that surfacing bit, the RC2255. That tool was in the Amana tool database that's in my old version. I can go in, load the old version, load that database, and find that tool, select it, and export a tool file for that bit only. Then go into my new version of Aspire and import that tool file into the database on the version that I'm using, and let it clog up the database of the old version that I'm no longer using. So, there's that. But yeah, having that big Amana tool database, oh man, oh man, that will slow down the loading of the tool database and everything. Oh man, it slows it down. It's almost as bad as having 1,400 fonts installed in your operating system like I have on my other computer in there. That's why when I'm doing a software capture video and I click on text, it can take 30, 45 seconds for that to even load and populate because I have so many fonts. So let's see here. Michael Keymont says they use a proprietary database format and they don't share. Well, would you? I probably wouldn't either. But yeah, being able to print out a list of tools, I could see where that would come in handy. So, Mario Montoya says also a warning about improper tool depth of cut in profile cuts. See, that would be very difficult because they don't know your machine. They don't know the material. They don't know the length of cut on the bit. So all of those variables would have to be filled out before they could put out any kind of a warning. Because if you're using a, let's say, 1/4 inch end mill that has a 1-inch length of cut, and you're cutting maple, how do they know what's proper or improper for your machine? There'd be a lot of variables involved there. So, let's see here. Michael Keymont says, I worked with Bob from CNC Cookbook on a Vectric importer, and he was unable to read their data set. They were no help either. Well, proprietary is proprietary, and it's proprietary for a reason. So, let's see. You could use a tool called Snippet to copy the tool data on the screen and paste to another file. Yes, you could do that. I saw somebody up here, Martin Pearson said, try the Windows snipping tool to save the text, then print. Yeah, there is that. There's some good options. Let's see. Sion Jones, quick question, please. Ask away. You have 8 minutes. Okay, Mario is referring to material thickness only. Okay, so yeah, that would have to be done. They would have to add a blank for the length of cut, and suggest it. To add a blank for the length of cut. I mean, I think that's legit because I have some 1/4 inch end mills that have a 1-inch cutting length, but I also have some others that have a 7/8 inch cutting length. So that's legit. I mean, you can get end mills that have that are oversized, that instead of being 2 inches long, they're 3.5 inches long and used for cutting, for doing deep routing. I don't have any myself, but I know some other people do. So, I mean, that's legit. They may want to consider doing that. So, again, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If we ask Vectric for a blank in the tool database to enter the length of cut of the bit, maybe they'll add it. So, okay, let's see here. Okay, Mario was talking about, referring to material thickness only. And again, having that length of cut blank in the tool database, that would refer to the material depth you entered in the job setup or over in material setup on the toolpath side. Yeah, and if they found any numbers that didn't coincide, they could throw up a warning. Yeah, I mean, request it. That, like I said, that's where they get their ideas. So let's see. Michael Keymont says, I recently did a 2.5 inch profile cut on a 3 foot by 2 foot piece. Tool only had a 2-inch length to cut. Yeah, you got to be careful though. If you are using just a straight end mill, and by straight I mean a spiral, but something that doesn't have like carbide tips sticking out the side. You theoretically can cut straight down to where just the shank of the bit is, down below the surface where there's no cutting flutes, but you're taking a chance because one miscue, snap goes the tools. If something moves over slightly, or if you're like me and you have a separate last pass of full thickness, even just 10 thousandths of an inch, you're going to have a lot of material there that is not covered by cutting flutes. I mean, I don't endorse that method, but it's your own trip, so be my guest, Okay, let's see here. Sion Jones says, trying to cut a map out with very detailed contours about 1 inch thick. What size end mill would you suggest? Or am I being too ambitious? I don't think so at all. I don't think you're being too ambitious at all. Detailed contours about a 1 inch thick, you would want to use the tapered ball nose bit, and you would want to do a 3D roughing toolpath first to hog away most of the material. Then, depending upon the outside dimensions, how big is it? You could use anything and how far away it's going to be seen from. You may get away with using a 1/8 inch end mill. But if it's something smaller that is going to be seen up close or being held in your hand, you may want to go to a 1/16 inch tapered ball nose end mill for your 3D finishing toolpath. The project is going to dictate, but I would definitely use a tapered ball nose bit on this type of a 3D carve, and I would definitely do a roughing toolpath to remove the bulk of the material and let the tapered ball nose focus on the details and not removing the stock, especially if it's about 1 inch thick. So let's see here. Michael Keymont, chip removal is critical in heat management. Exactly. And, I don't know if you had any issue with the shank of the bit rubbing against the sidewalls that had already been cut as it was cutting down below the surface. And it also is going to depend on your material, because like something like cherry, you can burn cherry if you don't load it into the truck right. You look at cherry wrong and sneeze at it and it'll burn. So, let's see here. What do y'all think of the idea of having round flat stock in the material setup as well as the existing square flat? Round flat stock in the material setup. Okay, you're talking about a circular piece in material setup, in like job setup? I mean, I can see where that would come in handy as far as visualization, but I don't really see an advantage to it. Let's go over to Aspire here. And let's see, I think, Bob, you're talking about up here in job setup, if you could have a round piece to set up here. I could see where that would come in handy. But let's see, I've got a 12 by 12 piece. Personally, I just draw the do the regular job setup and go with a 12-inch diameter on my Z0, Y0, create, and boom. That's, just as easy for me. But then again, um, you know, um, I could see where that would come in handy. I don't know. Suggest it. I mean, you know, suggest it. So, Let's see here. Suicidal at all times, still the world's greatest YouTube username. And make sure everything is locked down because it sucks to spend 20 plus hours for a part to move or for 20 plus hours for a part to move or coupling to let go. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I don't know about y'all, but personally, before I start a long project like that or a long carve like that, I give my machine the once over, and I don't care what kind of machine it is. I mean, I'll go around with a wrench and just see if anything is loosened up on the Gatton CNC and the shoestring budget CNC before that. I would go around with an Allen wrench and make sure all my couplers were tight, you know, blow off the lead screws and throw a little bit of lube on there just to make sure. That way I didn't have something let go in the middle of a, when I spent a few years as an aircraft mechanic in the Army, and we had a big poster on the wall in every hangar I ever worked in, sometimes more than one copy of the same poster. And it said, "Complacency kills." And the message that was trying to get across was the minute you think you know what you're doing, nature is going to come along and bite you in the butt because nobody can remember everything. Nobody. So you I've carried that with me throughout other careers, and I found it to be true. The minute I think I know what I'm doing, something's going to come along and slap me right across the face and tell me, remind me that I don't know what I'm doing on occasion, that you can't remember everything. So, you know, let's see here. Michael Keybot makes a comment that I forgot to mention, and he's absolutely 100% correct. The step over setting is important for getting good detail in the 3D finishing step. It is crucial. Ballpark is 10%. I would put 10% at the maximum. For good finishing detail, the step over, again, the project's going to dictate, but I've been known to come down to 6%. It just depends on, again, if it's a small project that's going to be held in your hand that has a lot of detail that is nearly impossible to get in and sand without removing some of that detail, uh, I have no problem 4 and 5%. If it's something huge that I can sand, 10% a good 10% a good starting point. Yeah, I agree, but I don't go any higher than 10%. So that's just me. There you go. That thick profile cut did cause my machine to loosen up pretty badly. Maintenance is key. It also has a lot to do with your settings, because like when this from the factory, my acceleration was so fast that it was jumping all over the place. Well, it's a strong machine; it can handle it, but that's a lot of vibration that is eventually going to loosen up fasteners. And if you're anything like me, if it's going to loosen up, it's going to do it at the worst time. So, you know, I figured taking 10, 15 minutes before I even turn on the computer to run the control software and just go around and wipe stuff down, check it out, see if there's any issues coming up. And, set the torque wrench to the torque value and click, 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 click. Okay, I'm good. So, all right, we've been on here for a little over an hour. I need to go ahead and end this one up. We didn't actually talk about a whole hell of a lot this week. There's more like a hangout and, goofing off with friends, but there ain't a thing. And my headset is flashing at me to let me know that its battery is low. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. um, let's go ahead and meet up again next week. I should have the spoil board finished and surfaced and be ready to get started. I'm not even going to speculate on what'll happen after that because I have so many things to do. Channel members, remember tomorrow night, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. The links to the members only live stream, go to my main channel page, go over to the community tab. There you'll find the links, big time supporters. That's where you'll find the links to be on screen with me, and we can work on your projects. Don't know what the topic's going to be tomorrow, but we'll think of something. I mean, we always have a good time. If you'd like information about becoming a channel member and sharing in that before mentioned good time, click that join button down there next to the subscribe button. A panel will pop up, a video will play that'll tell you all about channel memberships, more than you probably want to know. And I hope to see you tomorrow. If not, I hope to see you next week. So for now, go make some chips, go make some sawdust, go do something cool. Anything. Don't hang around watching this old guy. See you next week, y'all. Thank you very much to everybody, and have a good rest of your day.